Hey y'all, okay, I know I'm in a different setting. I am at home in my office, but I realized I don't have an intro for this episode because it is part two to this conversation me and my best friend were able to have, and it has gotten such great feedback. And so this is part two. So, hey, welcome to the Worthy Her podcast. I am your host, Sabrina Gray. I am so excited that we are here with this part two of this episode because this is the meat and potatoes where I just feel like we go a lot deeper in this second part of the episode. So grab your popcorn, grab your tissue, whatever you're going to need for this second part of the episode, and send this to a friend. If you got anything from this episode, which I know you did, comment it below, like, comment, share, subscribe, tag me on social media, tag me in the post and all of those things. So get ready for this episode, and I will see y'all next time on the Worthy Her podcast. Goodbye. Okay, bro, remember when we... Do you remember what I'm about to say?
No.
We were taking the pictures.
Baby, I don't know.
And you kissed my cheek. We were doing...
My gosh.
Bro,
I be
I'm
forgetting. I be having my moments and then I forget. I'm like,
you were like, sorry, you're like, it's fine. We're having fun. It's okay. And I was like, okay,
what?
let's go. Okay, everything go eat. All right, let's go.
It was so why funny. Did I have to do that? Like,
and then I'm like, Sabrina, that was so rude. You did not have to. It wasn't even weird because the thing is, it wasn't like the stuff makes me feel uncomfortable necessarily. Yeah. Like, it just is something that
I'm very mushy gushy. Like,
and I've only been that way with one person, so right. I'm like,
yes,
hey girl, what's up? I love you, dog. And
like
now
you're
I'm like
you can be verbally affectionate at a distance.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
Like you're good at affirming, but you have like your space for it. Like like for me, if I'm with my friend, because at that time, that particular incident, that moment.
No, it felt like an incident. Call it what it is. Huh? Yeah. This is a record.
You have been with me on a business assignment. And so I personally, like, that was like a love language, you taking time to come there, to be with me, to support me, to encourage me. Like, that was a moment. So we're having a great time. Like, it was going great. We're talking. At this point, we both live in different cities. So when we do come together, like, we have to intentionally be like, okay, let's come together because we have so much going on. So we went out to eat and we're taking pictures or whatever. And I don't even remember what happened. I think we're just taking pictures and I'm like, oh, my friend a kiss on the cheek. Because I can be very, like, I'm not a big physical touch person, but if I'm like safe enough with my friends, I can just be very affectionate. Like, let's sit in the same, like, we could be on the couch. Oh, let's share a cover. And it's not perverted.
Not weird. No, weird at all.
Like, that's the kind of friend that I've always been.
Yeah.
And I think in adulthood, I stopped letting myself be that way because I became guarded. And so that was me, like, even to myself, you are letting your guard down with Sabrina. Like, she has space, like the other spaces. She, like, you can do this with her and it won't be weird, awkward, uncomfortable. That was like my thing. And then it's like, when I saw your face, I was like, did I do something wrong? Like, I'm sorry.
I'm just glad I didn't do that. I said, no,
at my church. Remember when we, like, you were like, love you, bye.
Yeah, after our idolatry. Yeah, after all the conversation. Now, all the stuff is broken. I'm fine now. I've been in therapy, Kendra.
Girl.
I am healthy. Okay?
Yeah. But, I mean, friends give each other kisses on their cheek all the time.
Yeah, that was not weird. Even after you did it that time, I was more aware enough to say, girl, it's fine. Like, you're fine. Stop. Like, you're good. You're like, my bad. I'm like, no, it's good. We're good. Like, we're good. It wasn't like, but I was more aware, even though I was like, it caught me off guard. It did make me uncomfortable, but I was more aware to immediately say something to try to cast out where I know your mind would go because I felt my posture shift. And I was like, and then we were good. We were good. But I remember, and I think that incident was the pivotal shift from everything. And I think that the next couple conversations it was space, and then it was the idolatry conversation, because I remember feeling like, man, that was so great. Wow. I stayed the night. We talked. I
Yeah.
canceled my day so I could show up because I really wanted. I don't believe that you should do things by yourself. You already know. I don't. This is a
For
big
sure.
deal to me for you. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, this was so great. We sat and talked about the business, but I also had a very business hat on. So the whole time I thought I was like, I didn't realize that that wasn't as vulnerable because there was a lot of stuff going on with my personal life at that time that I didn't talk about while we were there. But I'm very big at moments for the person that's in front of me.
You're a big compartmentalizer.
1,000,000%. Not as much. I'm a little bit better at it now, but I really
Yeah.
am because I've had to be because I'm a leader in most of the settings. So my personal stuff can't come to the forefront. So I've trained myself to do that. So I remember in that setting,
100%.
huh?
I said 100%.
Yeah, and so I remember like afterwards when I thought it was like a grandiose time when you were like, I just didn't feel like you were very vulnerable or like really open about like, and I was just like, that was the time I chose. I made a decision that I'm about to be offended. I said,
You were
there's
like,
no
you
way that she
said,
still feels like
I
this.
can't do that right. You
I
said it,
did. I said,
mommy.
it just feels like it doesn't matter.
Oh my
And
God.
that was probably the first time that I had a thought process of like, maybe who I am in my
Yeah.
nature is not enough to be in friendship with her the way she desires it because I feel like I'm really trying like I felt like that trip for real like I was like yo no I'm not going to come guarded like I'm going to stay the night because I know like I just was like even though I have to go to work the next morning it doesn't matter like I was like I went to Target and bought clothes so that I
You
can
did.
spend the night and we were going to have a good time and I just thought that we really did but then when you explained it, or like when you listening to your posture, I was just like, yeah, I don't think,
There's a disconnect here.
yeah, that was when I was like, nah, there's a disconnect for sure. I don't understand.
Yeah. I think at the time I didn't know how to communicate what like I think again it goes back to that expectation thing.
Yeah.
Like expectation of if there is an awkward moment or maybe you are going through something, are you letting me in real time? Are
Hmm.
you communicating what you're experiencing, dealing with? Even like back to the kiss, if that was weird or awkward, like tell me why that was weird or awkward or uncomfortable. I won't do that again. Because I saw you change, but you didn't tell me that something
Because
was happening.
it wasn't
No,
weird
for,
or
no, for
uncomfortable.
sure. And
Yeah.
that wasn't a big deal. Like
Yeah.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
wasn't a
Yeah.
big deal. But I think at that time in my life, I was still like, if friendship does not look this particular way,
Hmm.
yeah, it just ain't gonna be. And I don't know if I want
Yeah.
to do it. You know, and you were saying the
Yeah.
same thing.
For sure.
And I think it was really just an attack on our friendship.
That's what I want to get
Because it
to.
wasn't like looking back, it's like, what?
Nothing was. It's
She
like, bro,
literally
y'all both need
stopped
to
her
rather calm
schedule.
down.
She is a mom. She is a wife. She's a business owner, and she stopped her whole day to be with you. If that isn't present, if that isn't,
Yeah.
I'm here for you, I'm with you.
I was like, bro, I spent the night. I don't spend the night with
Yeah, like
nobody.
you spent the night, like it. Yeah, I think it was just, yeah, I was, there's just this, I don't even know. Like
Because it's so
I was,
far removed. Like once
it is.
I feel like once we dealt with certain things, it's like okay. So I think the next time we ended up talking, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit because there was a moment I had already been feeling it. I don't know how we ended up on the phone that day. That was not the plan. We were not supposed to be on the phone that day, but we ended up on the phone
What day?
when the idolatry conversation happened. I'm saying I remember I had come to a moment of where it was like less about. I was like, I think it's just like I may not be well I may not, my personality may not be well to be in friendship with her. So from that last moment, I started to go before the Lord and I was like, I don't feel like you're telling me anything else inside of me needs to shift. I'm being vulnerable. I'm being open. I think that this may be coming to the end of friendship or she may not feel safe with me anymore because of she doesn't feel like she's getting X, Y, and Z. So I remember the conversation kind of started with me kind of being like, I just remember saying this to you. I don't remember if that's how it started, but I remember saying to you, like, even if I'm not one of the safe people or we're no longer in friendship, like, you need people around you in this season of your life because where God is taking you and how sacred and how intentional it
Yeah.
is. I remember being like, I will remove myself. I will come off of the like trying to be a part of the world. Because I was like, I'm finding out a lot of stuff on social media. Things feel like it's sacred, like we're not
Oh
having as
yeah, I
much
remember that.
conversation. And I was like, I don't know if I've done something or why that's happening, but I do remember being like, I came to a space where I was like, I just think I'm not a safe person for her anymore. And that was my own awareness where I was like, okay, if I'm not safe for this person, that is okay. I don't know what else to do in that space. I was like, I'm no longer willing to bend to be a prototype, which is what I would do in previous, just try to be whatever the other person needed. So I
Yeah.
remember coming to a space where I was like, I just don't think that I should walk with her in the next season. Like I don't know if I'm safe enough. Not that I didn't want to, but I was like in my like I love you enough and I see where you're going. I would rather me walk away than sit and be offended by what I don't have, what's not happening, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think, but I am a communicator. So I was like, I'm not
Yeah.
going to just walk away. I'm going to have a conversation and I'm going to like let her know, like, I love you. I'm grateful for all of the things like and I was very genuine in this. Like it
Yeah.
took a long time for me to finally say it because I didn't want to do it in like a half-hearted way. And I remember being like, "Bro, I love you, but I'm good if I'm not a part of that main circle or if I can't be in that space." I understand. I get it, bro. I'm good with it. And I feel like I kept trying to I didn't let you talk much during that space because I was like, I got to get all this out and just let her know. And I was like, and then she can feel like she's off the hook because I think it'll make things better or whatever. And then I don't remember. I just remember you asking the question, do you ever feel like our friendship, there's been idolatry or something like that? And I said yes so fast
You
because
said
I was
yes.
afraid to bring the conversation.
You
I had already
said
was talking to the
yes.
Lord about it. I didn't know how to bring the conversation up. So I brought it up by me walking away because I didn't want to do
Yeah.
idolatry. So I was just going to remove myself
Yeah.
in the whole sense of everything. So when you brought it up, it was an open door for everything to change.
Yeah. God, I had experienced deliverance, and I realized that I made life about my desires, people about what I wanted them to be, my marriage about, I want my husband to do this. I want my this to do this. I'm a developer naturally.
Hmm.
And so I always am looking for ways to develop, and people were a part of that. My
Yeah.
relationships were a part of that. And development in those spaces was expressed like control. A lot of the time, my development was expressed through control. And I didn't know that I was still very offended and unforgiving and holding people to these like unrealistic standards and expectations according to my soul wounds that I had not brought before the Lord or allowed Him to heal fully. So once I went through deliverance, my entire life changed.
Yeah.
The way that I saw people, the way that I saw myself, the way that I saw God, the way that I saw my husband, the way that I saw my friends. And so that question really was just like, are we idols to each other? Because I just feel
Hmm.
like our offenses, our conversations about your offense, my offense, they're very like small, but they get blown up to be bigger than what they probably should be. Like we are not communicating through these things.
Hmm.
What's going on? But yeah, so after I got deliverance and I started seeing people rightly, not according to what I wanted, but who they were,
Yeah.
according to what God had already said, I saw you different. I saw everybody different. Everything that I had in my mind, the record in my mind that I was holding for so many relationships in my
Yeah.
mind, according to what I was offended by, I had to let it go. And I just remember finally feeling free of like people having to pay me back for mistreatments or not managing something well or not saying something the right way. Like We're not perfect. And
Yeah.
I think women are more forgiving to men that they're in relationship with than friends that
Mm-hmm.
God is calling them to walk with. And
Yeah.
I think that it was easy for me to be like, oh, well, next relationship, I can develop another one. I can
Yeah.
do it. But it was like, no, every friendship ain't that. Like,
Yeah.
you need to recognize when it's a God connection,
Yeah.
when it's a God thing. And I remember when we first became friends and you were like, "Oh yeah, every friend is not a covenant friend." And you were kind of
Still stand
saying
on
that
that.
to like keep me out like this,
I
I
was
got
like,
Philip and then I got this friend over here and I
yep.
was like, "Okay, well, then I don't know what that means."
It's
I
so
would
funny.
say
Everybody
things
tells
to
me that.
you but I would say things to you like, what did I say this one time? And you were like, "Oh, I didn't need you to protect me." I was like, "Did you feel unprotected in that moment?" Like when I said that, like you were like, "Oh, I don't need you to protect me. Only feel like I just need my husband to protect me." And so, even though we have moved on from these conversations, in
They
the
were still
back of
seated.
my mind, with the record I was holding against you
Mm-hmm.
in my heart, aka idolatry,
Hello.
I was guarded in my heart, in my soul, the place that the Lord can see.
Yeah.
I was guarded with you. And
Yeah.
depending on how it would go, if it was great, you were great. If it didn't go great, I didn't know about how our
Mm-hmm.
friendship was. And I
Yeah.
kept you in this constant, like, tennis game
Yeah.
of if our friendship was good or not good. And so after deliverance, everything changed. And I was done being scared to ask you questions, having conflict with you, being all these things. I was like, if we're called to be friends, we can have our conversations and it doesn't change our interaction or our affection.
Yeah.
Though,
I think
like,
that's when
yeah,
everything shifted
yeah,
because I feel like in our relationship, I always said if something was bothered, I was bringing it up.
oh yeah,
That idolatry conversation, I found out about so many offenses you had against me, the records that I didn't know
no,
that would have been a problem for because at that point that was years. We've been in
years,
friendship. My son's gonna be 8. Zion's gonna be 8. So we've been friends for 8 years. I mean, I
absolutely.
remember being like,
Wow, every time,
I,
wow, I
I
didn't
was
know.
like, okay, so this conversation didn't go how I thought it was, and then it made me
Yep.
doubly like. So at first, it wasn't an initial like, all right, now we're
Yeah.
reconnected. I was like side eyeing. I was like, oh, I'm on eggshells now for real, because one of
Yeah.
my biggest pet peeves is when people don't talk to me about an
Yeah.
issue in real time, which is so funny
Yeah.
because it's the thing that you wanted me to do, but it was
Yes.
a lot of what also wasn't happening, but I never
Yes.
knew. I didn't, to be honest, you did a better job at hiding it or like,
For sure.
whatever. So I
For
didn't
sure.
know. And I remember being so frustrated that I'm like, okay, now that all this is coming up, now I'm hearing about the 7 year stint of record that's in my file. And I'm like, bro, what? Every time we talked, this stuff wasn't coming up. It would be like little, like small, you would say
You
like
would
really,
bring
really,
something up to me, and then I would use that to bring up something about what I was feeling with you.
yeah, but it would be so small. I don't ever think you told me like the deep part of it. And it's probably maybe you didn't know or deliverance or you just weren't comfortable. I remember that
It wasn't
conversation. I
even
said, oh, she's comfortable.
anything. It wasn't even anything like majorly so large that it couldn't be communicated through. I think
Yeah,
what was happening is the little things were becoming the
became big.
records.
Yeah,
And so over time, you just stack little offenses. Oh, it's not a big deal, but
yeah,
I'm going to stop dealing with her in this way. I'm not going to
yes,
go to her if I have a celebration, or I'm not going to go to her if I need to be vulnerable in this area. She's not going to be in the space that I once had her because she's going to respond like this.
yeah,
I'm psychoanalyzing,
yes,
hyperanalyzing the way that she will move according to my perspective. So it's
yes.
making me not give you another chance. It's
And
making
that,
me not open
yes.
up. It's making me close myself.
Yes, and I think that conversation,
That
you
is what
all
it
of a
was. It's
sudden,
little stuff. It wasn't
Kendra
even
had
big.
specifics, and I was like, "You ain't never had specifics. Now you got 8 specifics. Where is happening?" So it wasn't that it was big things; it was
Yeah.
that you can go to a specific moment that it made you feel a way, and I was
Yeah.
like, what is happening. And I am the friend that I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't have no problem saying like, hey, when this happened, I felt jealousy, and not jealousy because I think you don't deserve it. I was jealous because Kendra is the most consistent person I know. It's so annoying sometimes because I'm like, it feels like it looks easy for her, but I know her enough to know that she had to fight her way through that, through deliverance, through showing up, through staying in and connecting with the presence of God. We've talked about this, so it's not anything that I can't obtain to stay consistent. That's why I'm doing a podcast now, because I finally was like, okay, bro, how are you? What's up? And it was like that was time number 1900 that I finally asked you the
Oh
same
yeah.
question that I had been asking, and I just listened that time. Like it just worked. And so I would be, but I was always felt like in friendship because I was so closed off in. I didn't feel heard in other relationships, so I was like, well, I'm going to do it differently here. I'm going to tell her, not
Yeah.
knowing that me being saying it was also making her making it feel a kind of way too. I never thought about how me being honest in this moment could make that person feel. It was just like, yo, when you did that, like I felt this kind of way about it, but like, and I would say like the way I counteract, I don't do jealousy.
Yeah.
I don't sit in it long. The way
Yeah.
I counteract is through my support, because the enemy
Yeah.
ain't gonna ever plant a seed. I'm gonna do something opposite. Faith without works is dead. I'm not gonna just declare I'm not jealous. I'm going to move in action like I'm not a
Mhm.
jealous person, because I'm not. The root of that has nothing to do with I don't like what's happening. I start asking myself these questions. It's the number one attack that has been on my life with friendships and being a strong woman who is surrounded by strong women. It's the number one thing that comes up. It's the space that I feel like most people don't, and you tell me this a lot of like, man, how vulnerable you have to be to actually come and say that to a person or to bring the thing up.
Oh
But I'm
yeah.
like, I want to say this out loud, because if I don't say it out loud, it holds me in a space that I'm succumb to this. Anything that is in the darkness that we keep in the darkness, the enemy has legal access. He's not trespassing when it's in the dark. It's only when I bring it to the
100%.
light
Oh
that he
yeah.
cannot attack me in the area. But I didn't always do it with decorum. I didn't always do it with discernment. I didn't always know how to do it. So from that conversation, I remember being like, well, I thought I was going to get off the phone and like this friendship was going to be uh, over, but it doesn't feel like it's over.
I think that's always what we tried to do. Like we were like, what
Yeah.
we wanted these like definite answers on
Yeah.
like our roles in each other's life. And
Mhm.
when you were vulnerable, in my old man, I would penalize you for what you actually would say.
Yeah.
Like and not penalize you out loud,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
internally penalize you. I'm like, okay, you say you like to champion women or you want women to be their best, but when I'm with
Mm.
you, I don't feel championed
Jesus, when you
in
told me
your
that, I
physical
said,
present. You say that because, like, when you talked, it was always like, yeah, because when I do this, I'm like, da 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 da. Da. Then I would just be like, because in this moment,
I didn't feel
I
like,
don't.
felt like you were mean. Felt like you were having brunches and you were a mean girl.
Yeah,
Huh?
and so, and I remember when you were like, nobody tells me I'm a mean girl. I'm like, well, I am. Like
And I
you
was like, I
are.
am not mean. I'm direct.
You
You're like, you're
you would
mean.
say that. You would literally like, yeah, I'm not mean. I'm direct. Like, but or you wouldn't say that specifically. You'd be like,
No,
yeah,
that's what I would tell myself.
nobody ever
I
gives
was like,
me.
nobody has ever called me mean ever.
Nobody's ever said that to me, and I'm
Ever.
just like, well, that's how I
Kendra was
feel.
like, well,
So.
you're mean, so don't care.
But again, like I don't know. I just feel like there's so many personal developments, like personal development that we've had to stay in friendship to see each other walk through.
Girl,
And
I don't think the left
like
side
it's
of my
very
brain was
vulnerable,
working.
it's very uncomfortable, and maybe
Yes.
even people listening to this might feel like they've never had this conversation with their friends because most
Yeah.
friends don't talk like
But
this
they
to
just
each
walk
other
away. Or
because they
people
just
don't
walk
want to fight for
away.
friendship anymore. It's
So,
easier.
like, for instance, now if there is anything that comes to me, I now know how to bring it before the Lord
Yes,
and
first.
not take it personal.
Yes.
I used to take everything personal and then bring it to the Lord later, and
Yes.
it doesn't work for you in that way.
No, I'm like, bro, please, like, what's up? And I am a person that I'm like, no, come talk. I don't
Yes.
like error.
No.
I don't like making people feel away.
Yeah.
I hate that. I genuinely, is as a woman called to women, I hate it. Even though
Absolutely.
I've been it, I hate it.
Yeah.
I didn't know I was it. So when it was brought to my attention,
But you also hate it to the point where you'll hate it within your like in
in my
yourself. When you
exactly,
see that you do it, you're like, I equally hate it whether I'm doing it or anybody else is doing it.
yes, it
When
doesn't
that
matter.
happened, that wasn't cool. Like that's one thing I will say about you as a friend. You like will repent as soon as you know that you did something.
I'm not playing with nobody.
You've
One,
never
because
been
I
like, well,
don't
that
like
is what it
it.
is. I'm just like
No.
you always say in that moment, because you were hurt, I repent. I'm sorry. I could have
Yes.
communicated that better. And I've seen you actively keep showing up to improve. In our friendship, like particularly, you're like, I know that I might not have grown like to the point where
It's never gonna happen
it's the
again.
space of like perfection,
Yeah.
but I'm growing in it to the point where I'm not like I used to be
I'm
a
intentional
year
though.
ago. I
Yeah.
mean, and so you've been very intentional with your, I think, with your development. And honestly, our friends aren't ours. Like we don't own them.
Our husbands aren't ours. Our kids aren't ours.
Not
People are
like
not
we
ours.
can't own nobody, and
No.
everybody got their stuff. And even if
Hmm.
your friend has a funky attitude with you, that does not mean that you are the center of everything. They
Right.
got
Tit for
their
tat.
own stuff, they got their own life. You've been going through a lot in the last 3 years. I've been going through a lot in the last 3 years. God has
Hmm.
shifted you, God has shifted me. We come together and do our best to have a friendship, but not an intentional one at the time. Of course, there's going to be some misunderstandings, and we're
Yeah.
going to, like, that's just what happens. But if
Yeah.
you are willing to include Holy Spirit in your friendships as you are willing to include him in everything else in your life, you will see his heart. And that is to be what? Long suffering, kind,
Hmm.
gentle,
Kind, gentle.
compassionate,
Yep. Self
forgiving,
control. Yep.
merciful.
All
Like
of it.
that doesn't go out the window because it's your friend that offended you. Like it's
Yeah.
so easy to give everybody else in our life these spaces for flexibility, mercifulness, like being merciful, being adaptable. Like, no, I understand you have a lot, but when it comes to our friends, particularly with me, the best friend word, because I was not quick to call nobody that. Like, as much as I was a champion of people, I loved community, I was around family, my best friend, like that language with me particularly, I
Hmm.
that was not a ticket I gave out quick.
Yeah.
And so I knew that you're my best friend, not just because the Lord's revealing, but because of my heart to want you to be my best friend.
Hmm.
Like, no, I want her in this space. I want her in a space where I can talk to her about my marriage, my motherhood, like things that I'm struggling with. She can pray with me. I want her to be in this particular space. I recognize with that desire came when it wasn't matching up with my fantasy of what that would look like.
Hmm.
Because you can have fantasy in friendships too, and it's not a perverted fantasy. It's just anytime you want somebody to do something according to your desire or your serving, like it's self-serving, self-seeking, that's a fantasy that needs to be
Yeah.
brought out. And so when it didn't look the way that I wanted it to look, as far as like the way that you communicated or delivered a message, or maybe your affection, I would compare what I thought you had with other people to the way that you
Hmm.
were with me. And it would make me feel like you were reserving yourself. When I feel like people are reserving themselves, I feel like they're being fake. I don't know who they are. You're presenting one way to me. I don't know who you are. So then I guard myself up. And Kendra was too much in the thought process.
Yeah.
Like now that I actively pray for you as my friend and I bring you before the
Hmm.
Lord has exposed your heart to me. The Lord, it's not even about me. It's about
Yeah.
me being an intercessor in your life, me
Yeah.
being an iron in your life,
Yeah.
me not even asking for too much, even to the point where you're like, so what do you need in this friendship? I'm like, I just want us to grow closer with the Lord. Like, I don't need nothing else
Yeah.
because we can make friendships very selfish.
Yeah. And self-serving.
And I don't, in this phase of my life, I don't have capacity for that, but I'm not like, to be honest, I just don't desire it. I want friends that I can walk with that point me to the Lord, point me to what He said. I want friends that will encourage me to dig deeper into the things of God. I want
Hmm.
friends that are willing to not make my friendship the center of their life or their friendship the center of my life.
Yeah.
I want it to be about what is God saying and how do I partner with you in prayer or just in life to see His kingdom come, His will be done in your life.
Yeah. I
So
love
that,
that.
I know that was a long
No,
explanation,
that was
but
great. No, 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 no.
yeah, no, I feel like in friendship, people really struggle with like just fantasy, perverted fantasy in friendship too. And
Yeah, and social media doesn't help that.
oh,
Social media doesn't help in the dynamic of what we think friendship is supposed to look like. And I have to learn not everybody is supposed to walk intimately with me um in the space of it. So I still,
no,
not everybody gets to come close. And so, okay, so we talked a lot about friendship idolatry. We've talked about our friendship,
yeah,
which I hope that in this sharing in the vulnerability, y'all would be able to see an authentic conversation between friends. This is what our conversations look like. It probably is a lot more tears,
yeah,
probably on my end, when we're actually talking outside of the camera. But I think that I would hope that you can see two friends actually having the tough conversations, the real conversations, explaining and watching the other friend pause long enough to hear what she's saying, to hear her heart and not respond in defense, because that is a very real thing. And I did it for years. So I want to kind of pivot just to ask Kendra a couple of questions. Maybe she would have advice or wisdom on is if they're listening to this and they have friendships either that they want it to be reconciled or just kind of don't understand, and there has been challenges or struggles in the friendship, I know that we would tell them, okay, pray first. Because my question would be, well, how do they know when they just pray or when they confront the situation? How would you talk to them about their posture when they're bringing it to the Lord? Because I think that that also is important. And how would you, what advice or wisdom maybe you will give them in the space of maybe like if they want to fight for the friendship and they don't know how? Or does that make sense? Or I can
yeah.
ask it a
That
better
that
way.
does make
Okay.
sense. I actually wouldn't say pray first because when we look in scripture, the Bible says that if your brother has an ought with you, you need to go to
Go to.
them. And I think that we've had a horrible, like we haven't seen the most healthiest demonstrations of when you're offended in relationship, you going to the person,
Hmm.
not talking to somebody else about it, not sharing your heart with somebody else before you get to them, or even, I mean, yeah, you can, of course we seek God's wisdom in everything,
Hmm.
but it's to go to them and to tell them actually what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Like in my own life, I noticed I would feel things, but I would not actually say what I was feeling. I would skate around it. I would try to not feel it so I didn't have to confront it. I would rather not even talk about it, to be honest. But the record in my heart was the case I was building against them and why I couldn't be vulnerable or couldn't let them into a safe space. So, if you are somebody that is navigating transition in your relationships, in your friendships particularly, know that the kind of friendships that we had when we were in high school and were kids did not require as much responsibility or intentionality because we were always around the people that we went to school with or
Yeah.
our parents brought us around or our cousins or whatever. Like adult navigating adult friendships, particularly women and women, is a layered situation that you
Yeah.
have to know how to communicate through.
Hmm.
If you struggle with communication, if your friend struggles with communication, it could be hard to really express certain areas of where you
Yeah.
want the relationship to grow in. And most people don't even know how to say, I actually want our friendship to be more in depth, or I want our friendship to grow in the spiritual side. I don't know if friendships even sound like that right now. A lot of what
Yeah.
I see online is like people wanting to hang out, do brunch, do life. I don't know. And each friend you might want different things from. I don't
Yeah.
know.
That's
I
true.
would, but to really bring your heart to your friend, don't wait for them to be receiving of it to bring your heart to them because God is holding you responsible for how you manage the feelings You
Mm-hmm.
can either dwell on them, you can cast them out, you can build cases against people in your mind. Your mind is one of the most powerful tools that you have, and don't
Oh,
use your mind to fight unfair, which is not understanding that the weapons of the weapons of your warfare are not carnal, but they're mighty in God for the pulling down of strongholds,
strongholds, right?
and to set your mind on the things above. If we really desire to see God in our relationships and friendships, we have to be the ones willing to demonstrate it first.
Yeah, that's so good.
A lot of times we wait for people, and it's like, no,
No.
why don't you, like you
Yeah,
just said
you feel
earlier,
it.
you be the good friend,
Yes.
you be the deep friend, you bring prayer to your friendship,
Yep.
you bring it to your friendship. Don't just wait for people to bring it to you or to be good to you. You be good to them. The Bible says you're no different from a sinner if you love people that love you back. And I'm not even saying that there's like, again, me and Sabrina's story is very unique, I believe, to us. But I do think that in relationships, we can build offenses, and those offenses are the walls that we put up so that we don't have depth. And just don't even
Yeah.
let the enemy, I always say, don't let a devil that never experienced healthy friendship tell you how to have a friend.
Okay, period.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that I don't know. I think that that's just so powerful of if you feel it, don't wait for the other party. Like if you know that there's something is going on, I think that that is a beautiful
Initiate.
um yeah,
Initiate that
especially if you know
space.
you want the friendship. I think that that is beautiful. I was going to add something to that, but I'm like you summarized it in a way that it that really is it. If you know, I think about this with my husband. I think about this. I'm not waiting for him to initiate everything. I have to sow what I also want to see.
Amen.
I'm serving it into my friendships. I'm serving it into my marriage, and not by way of manipulation, but by way of like, this is what I want to see happen. Why am I waiting for somebody else holding them to something, a standard that one, I probably haven't communicated, right? And boundaries are not boundaries unless they're communicated.
Yep.
Expectations are not expectations unless they're communicated. Like they're not responsible for them. And so I think that that's the beautiful part of building and doing and of course we're talking about doing relationships with God, and that's just the way that we do relationship. And
Yep.
so I am so grateful that we were able to have this conversation in this manner, because though we've had this conversation before, I feel like there was just another measure of freedom for me personally that hit the room, just
Yeah.
of like just a deeper level of, I think, another level of awareness is probably how I would say it, is another measure of awareness, not to be put in a box, but just like, man, and it's great because the next two episodes we're going to do a solo episode on idolatry, because I think that it's a topic that is necessary to expose, and
Man.
it has to happen. And I've, y'all, if you've been watching the podcast, I've hinted at this probably 3 or 4 episodes that there's an idolatry episode coming. I was gaining my courage, y'all. And then I'm going to do an episode solo on friendship, because I also think that it's a topic that's necessary. Before we close out, I want to say I love you. And I
I
am
love you.
so thankful that you stuck it out even when it was tough and I wasn't the easiest. I've not been a natural friend. And so to walk through this journey and you stay, I would still say the word consistent, in the pursuing of the friendship, even if it was in a tough season. You stayed the course and you prayed enough, because you knew what the Lord spoke about the relationship before I knew what the Lord spoke about the relationship. And I just am thankful, because it's been one of the most pivotal relationships in my growth journey and my character development, and in my, I say the word patience, and I don't mean it with people, I mean patience with myself, to give myself permission to grow at the cadence God is requiring me to, instead of trying to perform for the person requiring something in front of me. So I love you, and I am so grateful, and I'm so proud of you. We didn't even get to talk, y'all, about her business and all the other things.
Yeah.
She's a whole multifaceted house all by herself, and we'll bring her back for that. But I felt like it was necessary for people to hear this side of you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, this has been great. Thank you for making space. I mean, you've always made space to talk about friendship, just with our own friendship, and we have done a lot of unpacking together.
Hmm.
We have unpacked for hours and hours and hours about business, about God, about marriage, about motherhood. I mean, you are literally one of my unpacking friends. Like,
Yeah.
we unpack and we build, and we allow God, and we have allowed God to shift us, to build us up. And I mean, I tell people all the time when I'm anywhere, I always say I did not have a whole lot of friends that talked about purpose. A lot of people in my world at the time were very kind of traditional and kind of rule followers of like the system, and I saw you go against the grain,
Hmm.
so it gave me the courage to as well. And seeing you boldly have a salon in your house, I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. I was like, this woman is out here with a legit business. I know I can have one. And you were a representation in a space that I did not see any. And so thank you for, just being willing to have conversations like this out loud. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, when you have prophetic, weighty, called friends,
Yeah.
there's a lot of layers that come with that. And I know, and it, like, I know this episode was really deep, but like, and throughout our friendship has been some really hilarious times that
Yeah.
we literally can't say out loud, like
Only because you won't let me.
times where we just went into, because we're both like 90s babies that grew
Yeah.
up in the
We
early
love
2000s.
fashion.
We love fashion. We love
Hmm.
talking about what we want to do. And like this podcast, we started our first YouTube channel together. Like
Yeah.
when you were doing the segments on womanhood and sisterhood, and when I would send my logo ideas
Girl
to you,
talk with
you'd be like,
Sabrina and
I don't
friends.
I don't
Period.
like that. Like, and I
Hmm.
like would it just have to kind of go back to the drawing board. I've hosted worship nights, and you literally were the you were the preacher, because I didn't have. I'm like, she's a
I forgot
woman
about
that
that.
preaches. Like, she's a woman that prophesies. So in the midst of all the other things that we've been navigating, this has been a space of just seeing each other navigate through it, and also
Yeah.
including each other while we navigate. And so it's been great. Like, if
Amen.
anybody listening, I pray that they really hear just the honest, raw truth on friendship,
Yes.
the stuff that people don't really post on social media.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we
Yeah.
usually see either a friendship when it's like already cultivated, or
Yeah.
at the beginning, because the beginning
Hmm.
is the bliss. Already
Yep.
cultivated is the bliss, but that like awkward
In
in between, or
between,
like the distance, the transitions, we
man.
don't really get that. So
And
yeah, it's
somebody
been
said
great.
on our
I love
post the
you
other
so much.
day, I just love y'all's love. Oh my gosh, I love y'all's friendship. And I'm like, baby, if only you knew
Yeah, but
the
I mean, I think the same thing is with a marriage. Like,
yes, it's no
you know how many
different.
people are like, "Oh my gosh, you and
Relationship
your
goals.
husband are like, thank you for showing up in this way." And also, we are very intentional about having the marriage that we have.
Yeah.
We are very intentional about the way that we love on each other.
Hmm.
There were seasons where we could have literally walked out the door, and we
Easily.
chose to stick
They
in it
instead. Yep.
together. It doesn't
It's
take
all a
away from
choice.
how great the marriage is, it just adds
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. It's all a decision.
It's all of
Everything's
this.
it's a decision.
Yeah, for sure.
Things. Listen, you already know. If you don't know if you're first time here, I want you to know that you were worthy then, you are worthy now, you are worthy, period. And you are deeply known, seen, and loved by God. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see y'all next week on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Peace out.
Across all platforms.
Pew, 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 pew. It's like, please.